Coming up today on Folks, we'll take a look at the problems facing the black man, from the historical roots of the problems to the current realities of the black man's dilemma on today's edition of Folks. Hello everyone and welcome to Folks. I'm Sonya Masingale. In books, movies, radio, and television, the black man has been portrayed as lazy, irresponsible hustler who avoids honest work and exploits women. Often he's portrayed as a violent and dangerous criminal. Although we're finally getting a few more positive images of the black man, the stereotypes hang on. But the truth is that the black man really does have more than his share of problems, and the negative media image is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, later on today, we have a fascinating group of black men who have beat the negative odds against them. They'll give us their insight on the plight of the black man today. But first, let's take a look at the historical events that have contributed to the demise of the black man. The decline of the black male in America has its roots in slavery. Black slaves had to struggle against what seemed to be insurmountable odds to maintain family structure. Male slaves were seldom allowed to assume their roles as men in the traditional African way as providers and protectors of women and children. But in spite of the brutal conditions of slavery, the black family remained a strong unit. Although many families were split apart by slavery, most maintained some connections. When slave fathers were separated from their homes, other black males in the community assumed the father role in the family, thereby giving root to the African tradition of the extended family in America. After emancipation in 1863, the black male still held on to his role as provider, protector, and leader of the black family. Whether they were skilled, unskilled, or middle class, the majority of black families were headed by black males. In the early part of the 20th century came the beginning of the Great Migration north for many blacks seeking to escape the rigid Jim Crow laws. Although black women were tolerated slightly more by whites, the black man continued to hold on to his position as head of household. It seemed that black men were making some gains. Black writers, artists, and musicians dominated the era of the Harlem Renaissance. Black men fought in both World Wars and Korea. But by 1965, the Moynihan Report called attention to the problems of the black family. Although black men and women fought side by side for civil rights and racial equality, the black family headed by a man was becoming scarce. Moynihan reported that 25% of black families were headed by black women. The civil rights movement gave some hope that at the end of segregation and discrimination, the black male would have leaving black men without skills and education, unable to compete in the new workplace. Homicides were committed by black males. Incarcerated or dead. Joining us in the studio today is a distinctive panel of 5 black men. All are quite aware of the problems that we're facing with black men in this country and are working in their own way to help alleviate the problem. Let me introduce you to our guests. We have Mr. Lester Pourciau. He is the Director of Human Resources at LSU here in Baton Rouge. Mr. Louis Armstrong, he's a mortician at Armstrong-Mackey Funeral Home. And Father Albert McKnight, he is currently in Lawtell, Louisiana, and he's president of the Southern Development Foundation. We also have Percy McCrainey. He's an attorney with his own private practice here in the Baton Rouge area, and Ardie Scott, Jr. of Plaquemine, also a mortician at Gilbert Funeral Home. Welcome to folks. The statistics are real. They're shocking and frightening. Father McKnight, as one of the leaders in your community, are you aware of this problem in your community?
I've been aware of the problem not only in my community, but also nationally for some time. I think the problem has to be understood within the context of the crises in the black community as a whole. And it's basically, from my analysis of the problem, that we have lost our roots, that we are an African people. And as African Americans, we have lost that spiritual, cultural spirituality that's at the essence of African culture. And because we have lost that spiritual underpinning, we don't know who we are, and we have the crises that's faced in the black community. By the 4th grade, over 20% of black male are lost. By the 4th grade, primarily, well, the whole integration, what we have done through integration of schools, not knowing who we are, not knowing as an African people, we learn differently, we think differently, we have a different culture, that we've just lost ourselves. And that's showing itself in the crises of the black male.
Mr. Pourciau, would you agree with Father McKnight that it's also a problem with the spirit?
Well, certainly it's a problem with the spirit, but from a more real standpoint, when I work at Louisiana State University, in the personnel department, I see where many black men, we've laid people off, they've lost their jobs through firing for many reasons. You can see them losing their self-esteem. In my own household, the household that I grew up in, my father is who gave me the image that I try to portray to my children and to the young men I come in contact with. We're asked every year, well, we weren't asked last year, but we're asked every year to speak to the freshman class so that they can see the positive image of a black man. And I think that certainly the spiritual part of it, but the economics, the bringing home the bacon, the part of the movie there that you talked about, the slaves who were the head of the household, they became slaves, they lost that. I mean, we're going through that same period right now in 1988.
Mr. Armstrong, I'll throw it to you. You, along with this distinctive panel of black men, have overcome some of the odds that were against you, and you have become a success, and you're hopefully bringing your family along with you. But what is it that made your experience special?
Well, number one is self-discipline. I think that it's very important that religion plays a great part, but I think as a whole that the black male role model has lost his identity, as Father McKnight had stated. I feel that the moral aspect of the black male condition starts in the home. And no other way that you can look at it other than the fact that you must train at home in order to get the moral values, and I had that training. My father died when I was 3½, but his death did not hinder me because I had brothers and sisters who set a role model for me to let me know that I had to take my place in society. And in order to do that, there were special trainings that they gave me. They gave me a religious moral, self-determination, and a will that what you want, you go out and get it.
Work for it honestly.
And work for it honestly.
Mr. Scott, would you lend the benefit of your experience to us also?
Having haven't been exposed to, and I have to, not being selfish, a good family, mom and dad, and the church, society as a whole. I was exposed at an early age to a good environment, there again establishing goals and priorities at an early age. Throughout life, every time I had the opportunity to be exposed to youth, particularly young men, I shared some of those upbringings to them. I think it's very important that we share and let the young men know that there are challenging goals out there, and you have to be prepared. It's not an easy task. However, if you continue to strive for excellence, it will be there. I have the opportunity to belong to the crew of Camelot, and in that organization, we expose young men to society. We have a total of 10 of them in ages 14 to 18. There, those young men are exposed to the club members having a cross-section of careers, and constantly urged to continue to align their socialistic minds at an early age and continue to strive for excellence. I think it's important that they realize that there is an economic situation out there, and they can be a positive asset to it if they continue to better themselves. And this certainly is what we're trying to instill in the young men at an early age.
Mr. Pourciau, you're also involved in some way in your community in getting the black youth up. You're trying to give them a leg up.
I've been involved with the YMCA in coaching, and at the school my children attend, Our Lady of Mercy. I'm out coaching with the YMCA. We see lots of black kids will see you coaching and with your children, and I think that's important to show that to the very young age children, because we're talking kindergarten, first grade, and second, third grade teams in all sports. And I enjoy it, and I'm able to talk to some kids, and I hope to try to get some of them on the straight and narrow.
Father McKnight, what can the rest of us do to help to ease the burden of the black man?
Well, I think, first of all, I think we have to understand the problem. The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson is a good primer to understand our situation, that it's part of a community, black community situation. It's economic, but when you look at the economics, we are people that have over $200 billion coming into our hands annually. And as a people, what do we own? What do we control? How can we provide jobs for our own? We're totally dependent upon others to provide jobs for us, which just doesn't make sense. That's why I think you have to understand the problem within the whole context of the black community. I know personally I work with some young men, meet with them on a regular basis, trying to role model and challenge them to be the best that they can be. Right now, trying to organize, see, I've been working over 20 years in economics, cooperatives, and right now trying to organize a national cooperative, but with a spiritual thrust, because spiritual is not the same as religious. We got a lot of people going to church that's not being spiritual. And that's why I identify the spiritual aspect of African culture. It's not church going, but it's a way of living, in tune. It's holistic. And this national program trying to marry the spiritual with the economic, getting individuals, even high school students, to start saving money, to pool their money and do small enterprises, to be able to learn how to provide for themselves.
Everybody is nodding in agreement with you. You seem to have hit on something very important. Mr. McCrainey, would you agree that generating jobs in the black community controlled by blacks would help?
I think very definitely. There was a study done by the University of Notre Dame that showed that blacks, for years, both black and white, where the illegitimate birth rate in those years corresponded down the road with the same unemployment rates as years came. And so we need jobs in the black community. We also need economic development and programs designed to create jobs. So I think it's very helpful.
Are you currently working in the community or with your church?
With my church. I'm also in the legal profession, a member of the Martinet Society, Baton Rouge Bar Association. We're trying to stop young people from getting into trouble, first of all, and realize the effects that prison can have on them, do discouraging projects.
The number of black males in prison is kind of a frightening number, for about 40-some-odd% in our prisons. They wouldn't get there if they stayed out of trouble. But do you believe, and I'll throw this question up for the first person who wants to answer it, do you believe that University of Chicago study, by the year 2000, is that going to happen? Are we going to lose almost 70% of our black men to jail, drugs, or violent deaths?
I believe so, if we don't do anything.
You won't have to wait till the year 2000. I believe in 1988 in Louisiana, there are more black males in prison than there are in higher education.
You mean in college?
In college, right.
Mr. Armstrong?
That's a very true factor, but you know, hitting again what Father McKnight said, we have to look at several aspects. We have to look at the aspects of why we do not have the type of economic togetherness. It's because, number one, we have to instill within our community leaders and within our community itself to support each other. Once we come together as a complete ethnic group, then there is strength. As he said, there are $200 billion floating in the black community. And what can we show for it? And that's one of the sad features of our society. If you look around the black community, you'll find that most of our black-owned businesses are closed. They're closed because of non-support. We have to support within our own community in order to get a foothold, along with the moral aspect of training our young people when they have the proper training coming up at a very early age. And that role model is there, telling them what is right and what is wrong. You're going to eliminate the drug processes in your community because you're going to be able to tell your children, you know, that this is not right, this is wrong. But then our other problem is that we have so many of our black leaders who are supporters of the crime, who are behind the crime. And these are some of the things that really need to be looked into.
You know, I just had a recent experience myself with the criminal justice system. And the way I categorize that system is that the criminal justice system in this country is criminal, especially as far as the black male. I was arrested, found guilty of one charge, and out of 23 witnesses, 13 perjured themselves, mostly state policemen and city, perjured themselves to get me. There was a modern lynch mob in court. And if they do it to me, what about the ordinary Joe?
Exactly, there's no protection.
Right.
Something that disturbs me, I don't know any answers for it, but I'll throw it out. We're saying, okay, we need to come together as a community, and yet so many of us aren't in our communities anymore.
And that's one of the things that I have looked at. I started to build a house rather, in another community, but it was also a black community. But then I started to thinking, why don't I just go ahead and improve where I am? Because I felt that I could do a better job in helping our young people and the community and in avoiding the black flight is what we're talking about. Because we're so busy trying to get out of the community that we are leaving the problem behind. Why not stay there and face the music?
But it also sounds like desegregation has not helped us as much as we had hoped in the 60s.
Well, I think that most of the time people talk about, are we children of the 60s like I am? All we heard about was integration, and one day you'll get a job and you'll live in a better community, and the whole thing sticks with you, so that when you graduate from college, the first thing you think about is not going back to the community in which you grew up in. Or that the businesses, for instance, you've When I was a kid, I could never go to McDonald's. It was not open to me. So as soon as it was, I started going to McDonald's, and I left the fried chicken joint on the corner alone. Now that's closed. And, you know, desegregation has hurt us in many ways. That's one of the ways. We've lost our black businessmen. I used to know many black businessmen in the community that I grew up in, South Baton Rouge. We don't know those people. They were also people we could look up to. It's hurt the children in school. His father said, we don't really know who we are anymore, especially when you're the only black in a class of all whites. You then completely lose your identity. You have no idea who you are. It's a problem that I have with my children now.
One of the prime aspects, if you look at it in reality, how many blacks have the money to be able to afford certain franchises such as McDonald's, Burger King, such as being able to keep up with modern day trends in regards to those type of businesses that will afford them great opportunities? I was quite proud to see the new McDonald's out on Harding Boulevard, who is franchised by a young man who is not of the state. But he comes here and puts his business in a black community, having faith that the black people of this community are going to keep him floating. And they've done a good job. And those are some of the things that we need.
Yeah. See, that's why we have to learn the cooperative mechanism. What I'm about right now is trying to get 1 million folks to save $5 a month every time they have $100 to invest in the same national entity, and that way accumulate the sizable capital necessary to develop businesses. We have the income comes in. It's just developing the mechanism, institutions to help us to pool our little bits, many pooling our little bits to accumulate the large sums of money.
Mr. McCrainey?
Speaking about McDonald's, it's interesting, I read an article where the black family or the black male has changed over the years, its image problem. As you know, the traditional male started off as the warrior, and during the industrial times it transformed to the provider. And now we have these black kids who are in school, and we have a serious drug problem in this country. And the black kids, they see the drug dealer and his lifestyle and the material things that he's acquired. And how can you enthusiastically urge a student to work at a McDonald's or a Burger King for minimum wage? And that same problem is also prevalent in the middle class, materialism. And when it gets to morality, it takes a second step in America when it comes to economics.
Would you say that the media is not helping with their constant harping on the underclass and then their constant promoting of the material things that everybody must have? The Guess jeans, oh, excuse me, not supposed to give product names, but you know, the designer jeans, the fancy tennis shoes, and the German cars.
And that's why I say it's spiritual, it's values. We got to change values from the individualism and the consumerism to a sense of unity, working together and pooling together, that we have to create. We have the resources there in the black community. It's just pulling it together to build together.
Another good example is looking in the black home itself. Now, when you look in the black home and say one of the great rock groups comes to town, in the black community, the first thing they want to do is have something new to go to it. That's right. They're going to spend that money to buy those items and not know where they're going to pay the next bill. And it's really a part of discipline within the home. I think that the role model of the home must say, no, you cannot do this and you cannot do that. I think that we are spending entirely too much money on clothing.
Amen.
The clothing manufacturers are wealthy because of our ethnic background and habits that we have developed for ourselves. And these are some of the things that seriously need to be looked at. This is a part of role model, taking care of your home.
I, for one, am inspired. We have just enough time for one quick comment from Mr. McCrainey, and then we're going to have to close for today. Mr. McCrainey?
I think the problem in the black community, as well as with black images right now, is we have to get back to the Protestant work ethnic theory in the black home. As I said, we cannot teach children the values of hard work and to acquire things. If they see drug pushers, things like that, people in the street who are working for nothing, it's hard on them. It's hard to imagine them to do things like that. We have to get back to the traditional roles in the American black family. Hard work, you get what you pay for. And when we do those things, I think the black male will get the respect that's necessary and due him.
Well, there are no easy answers, but all of you have posed some very good solutions, and I'll be looking to all of you, to each of you in the future, to how those things are working, the things that you're working on. Thank you very much for being on Folks. We're out of time for today. Be sure to join us next week for another edition of Folks. Bye-bye.